Fellow Zimbabweans, brothers and sisters, Zimbabwean security services have been politicized and hijacked by ZANU-PF over the last 32 years. Politicians in uniform are the main obstacle to a new life for our nation. It is also true that the success of any attempt to rebuild Zimbabwe after ZANU-PF will depend on the extent to which the security services are democratized and professionalized. These institutions must be thoroughly depoliticized and reformed if we are to begin afresh and if we are to sustain change over the long term. It is time we began to seriously discuss these issues and to do something about them. As part of this process, in 2011, I commissioned professional consultants to research and write a detailed paper on what a democratic security sector could look like. The resulting document represents my vision of what a new government could do to align the Army, Air Force and CIO with the international best practice. This is not an official policy statement, but rather an icebreaker. My main aim in tabling this paper is to encourage a national debate among democratically minded people on what a new security sector should look like. I welcome comments from all Zimbabweans, including those in the security sector who are eager to see their institutions professionalized. I am convinced that many of the younger members of the security services would like to be a part of a system that is based on professionalism rather than politics. In such a system, they will work with their fellow Zimbabweans and not against them. They will be promoted and rewarded on merit. They will also be trained, equipped and paid in a way befitting the most modern and professional security services in the world. This is not a pipe dream, but an achievable goal if a democratic transition can be brought about. We also need to talk frankly about how we bring about a transition of power. The paper applies to a situation where transition has already occurred, but how will we get to the point when reactionary elements of the security sector refuse to abide by the democratic will of the people? What is needed to bring about the transition of power? Again, the views of all Zimbabweans are welcomed, and particularly those in the security services whose hearts are secretly with the people. We need to hear from you. Change within the security sector is a taboo subject, and we all know why. Zimbabwe is not controlled by the people, but a criminal alliance between illegitimate politicians and a military junta. That is why I am in exile. That is why you are not able to speak about these things openly. But it does not mean we are helpless. Together we can and will do something about it. What are some of the most important ideas in the Defence and Security document? You will have to read the paper for yourselves, but I believe some of the key proposals are as follows. First, within 30 days of coming to power, a new government should form an expert official review committee which would make recommendations on a wide range of defence and security issues. Second, a series of constitutional changes are needed to create a framework within which the security services are subordinated to the civil authority. These changes could include the creation of an independent defence and security inspectorate. The purpose of the inspectorate would be to ensure that the services comply with democratic norms. The inspectorate will end the culture of immunity and impunity that has existed under the Rhodesian Front and ZANU-PF. The inspectorate would be powerful. It would have powers to investigate each and every security service activity, including human rights violations, and it would be capable of mounting prosecutions. Another important constitutional change would be the requirement for the CIO to be brought under legislative control. An Intelligence Services Act will need to be passed. The paper also speaks of the need to return the Zimbabwe Republic Police and the Army to their proper roles. The ZRP would be demilitarized and become the primary instrument for maintaining law and order. The Army would be externally focused and would have very little to do with domestic affairs. It could only be deployed internally in extreme conditions, and this deployment could be revoked by Parliament at any time. Likewise, the intelligence machinery would work in a subordinate capacity to the police and only to provide technical and informational support to ZRP. Internal special operations must be prohibited under a new constitution. After After implementing the necessary constitutional changes, the Police Act and Defence Act will need to be thoroughly re-examined and revised where necessary. One of the practices that will need to be abolished is that of retraining old officers simply because of their political loyalty. These people are blocking democratic change and blocking young and talented officers from receiving the promotions they deserve. Mandatory retirement ages should be implemented to provide opportunities for younger and more democratically orientated officers. After a change of government, there will also be a need to work directly on the culture of the services. Legal change on its own is not enough. What we need is a complete shift in the way military and intelligence personnel think. This process will be encouraged by a major and ongoing program of professionalization centered on depoliticization, redeployment, retraining and re-equipping. Demobilization will also occur when necessary. One of the very important changes is that party militias and Operation War Veterans groups will become illegal, as would membership of political parties for service personnel. A final word. Zimbabweans are intelligent, capable people. Together we can build a new security sector and a new nation out of the ashes left by ZANU-PF. I commend this paper to you and ask that you give me your considered thoughts through the secure feedback form at www.freezimbabwe.com. I believe firmly that we have the intellectual ability and determination to democratize our security services, but all freedom-loving Zimbabweans need to think and work together on this project if we are to see it become a reality.